Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to my beauty industry enthusiasts, content creators, and brand visionaries. Get ready to step into a world where beauty meets business, where the creator economy blends seamlessly with strategy. I'm Sonia, and this is Lip Service, the podcast. We're about to redefine the way that you think about the beauty industry. From the boardroom to the makeup room, we're leaving no stone unturned. Lip Service is your backstage pass to the beauty industry's best kept secrets. Now take out your notebook, fill up your emotional support water bottle, and swipe on your favorite lip gloss. Let's get into the episode. Welcome back to Lip Service, the podcast. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing a longtime content creator, a founder, a mother, and just all around amazing person who I've loved to follow, Susan Yara. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I think fun fact is that you've been creating content for a decade and I have been doing content brand deals for a decade. So we have really seen it all. And I feel like the future of this conversation is going to be crisp. So beauty content creators, get out your notepads because Susan Yara is dropping the knowledge today on the podcast. But before we get into all of that, Susan, please tell us what is on your face today?
Oh, what is on my face today? Let's see. Let me actually think about this. Okay, so we're actually, I know that this is going to be posted afterwards, but we're in the middle of the Naturium Memorial Day sale. So I've got, of course, a lot of Naturium on my skin. I always wear Dew Glow Moisturizer SPF 50. It's one of my go-tos in the morning, mostly because it just helps set my makeup too. So I'm protecting my skin, setting my skin, getting it ready for my makeup. And it gives me the glow. And then what else do I have on my skin today? I keep the morning really simple. So vitamin C serum. I always use our multi-peptide advanced serum. It's the best. I'm not supposed to have favorite children, but I can't help it. It's one of my favorite serums of all time.
Love it.
And then I have on, you know what? I recently went back to the old school Glossier skin tint that used to be like a fan favorite. Oh, I pulled it back out and I was like, why did I stop using it? And I know the reason. The reason is because I've had so many PR samples come in from other brands, you know, that you start to move on. But I've been kind of taking a step back and going to the products that I used to love. And so I've got that on my skin. I've got, again, another product I went back to is the NARS concealer that I used to love, like for the past who knows how long. Let's see. I've been loving there's two setting powders I've been loving. One is the pink powder from Patrick Starr's line. What's it called? One Skin. And then the one I have on today though is from Huda Beauty. So it's their both
of their powders. I hear excellent things about.
So good. It's so good. So I have that on. Patrick Ta's blush. So good. What else? You know, I've got a lot of like influencer brands, celeb brands on my face today.
Good for you.
You know what? I didn't even realize I was representing.
Supporting the crew.
Right. Because even Glossier in some ways is like it started from
an original.
Exactly.
From Emily.
It's like Emily. Exactly. And then I've got Rare Beauty mascara on.
And what is this lip? It's so corally.
Oh, that's Naturium.
Oh, of course.
Lip liner though is the lip liner is Makeup Forever, but the lip balm is our Naturium Phyto Glow lip balm in the shade Latte.
Perfect. Oh, I love that one. I think that the browns part, the Latte collection, I don't know all of their names, apologies, but those were my favorite colors because I feel like those were underrepresented in the market. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
All right. And then next question I always ask our guests at the beginning is if you were going to the afterlife tomorrow, unfortunately, however, whatever your afterlife feels like, what is the one product you feel you would take with you?
Naturium Dew Glow Moisturizer SPF 50.
Gotta do it.
It's going to be hot there, right? I'm assuming I'm going to hell, I guess. I don't know why. But immediately I was like, afterlife, it's going to be hot there. So
it's going to be hot. Oh, no.
So I've got to take my sunscreen.
I love it. Good. Okay. And then the very last question is, as someone who is a very creative person and shows up online, both personally and professionally, where are you finding inspiration right now? What's kind of giving you a spark?
You know what? I think for me, especially after being online for 10 years and especially being in like the long form content world with YouTube,
Yeah.
right? I kind of want to go back to, I think after a while you build a formula, right? If you stay a content creator for a while, you kind of have a formula.
Sure.
You know what's working, you know what your viewers like.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of don't stray from it because then you notice your views plummet, right? And
Of
so
course.
I've been definitely in this formulaic type of content for a while. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I really just want to be a little bit more casual. And I know that sounds weird because it seems like TikTok finally is starting to go from casual to, it's
More
taking on
formal.
the whole life of exactly. It's taking on like the
Yeah.
YouTube life where it went from being
Mm-hmm.
super casual and viral videos, short form, to now it's becoming, it's now going into like the long form. They want more content that's more produced. They're like
Yeah.
trying to figure out that whole strategy. But I think for me, I really want to be a little bit more casual. And I think mostly because I'm at a place where I guess I don't really care. It's less of a business now for me to be a content creator because,
I see.
I've moved on to other things being my business.
Yeah. So you can be a little bit more loosey goosey, and I love that.
Yeah, test things out, have some fun with it.
Amazing. Well, that is a great kickoff to the episode. So let's dive into the rest. So I am so excited to have someone like Susan on this podcast because she can truly reflect from both angles, which I love. It gives us such a great perspective. And we are going to start by kicking it off from her creator perspective. So, as we have all heard, 10 years creating content is no small feat. It is a journey. And I think so many people are at the very beginning of their content creator journey and they just can't even fathom 10 years. So, can you give us a little insight of number one, how have you kept yourself motivated over a decade to continue to show up for your community?
So I actually want to take it back a little bit more. I've had my own
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel for 10 years, but I've actually
Yeah.
been an online creator, a beauty editor, and in the media since 2002, 2003, and started
Mm-hmm.
online in 2003. And that was at Forbes magazine
Yep.
when we decided to go to Forbes.com.
So you've really had a much farther back experience than what people, I'm sure, we always go to the first, of course, YouTube creators, but far beyond that, there was a ton more of on-air forward-facing presence. So you've been doing this in your blood, ingrained for a long time. And even with going back to like pageants and Miss America, like all of that is sort of like being forward-facing content creator sort of vibe. You're doing the influence from very early on before this was even a thing.
Yeah. Listen, I say this to people all the time. You have to have stamina. And so if you're going to burn yourself out, which I saw a lot of people do during lockdown, especially, and as TikTok starts to really give
Mm-hmm.
people a way to just surge their following, I saw people posting so many times every day, 3 times a
Sure.
day. It's too much for one person to handle. And you're going to
Mm-hmm.
get burnt out. You're going to run out of ideas. You're going to be exhausted from it, right? So if that's too much for you, you need to acknowledge that for yourself and go at a pace that works for you, right? Like I think ignore all
Yeah.
the information that you hear people, saying that, like you've got to post X amount of times a day at this time of day and it's got to be, like that is the worst advice I've ever heard because it's just not going to work for you and you can't game the system, right? Like you can occasionally, but the algorithm is constantly changing. So the thing that you need to do the
Sure.
most is you need to stay consistent with what you do, right? Because that's what your viewers
Mm-hmm.
expect. So if you want to grow at a really fast pace, you might not get that. But if you have really solid content and you're posting at a pace that works for you and it's very regular, you will build a community, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the
Mm-hmm.
most massive community to be a community that's engaged. And I think having an engaged community is so much more important because that will keep you going. Because it's like
Oh
feeding your
yeah.
family. You know what I mean? So if you have a true community,
100%.
Yeah. So if you have a true community that you're working with and that you feel like you're part of and that you're helping to lead, then it's going to keep you motivated to keep going, right? And it feels fun and it feels exciting and you feel like you've got this purpose. And I really think that that helps to keep you motivated.
Yeah. I think one thing I would add to that as well is that when people force themselves to show up online more and like meet those quotas that these people tell them that they need to meet, they end up making very lazy content that is outside of their niche, outside of their true passion. And that's not a problem from, a granular view, but when you zoom out, if you go viral for some of that content, if that's what a brand sees, if that's what gets in front of someone that you're trying to impress, that's the impression that you are making then. I would much rather the creators that I advise, the people who I speak to, and the brands that I talk to, I tell them, slow down. And let's make sure that we are creating things that fit within the scope that we want to be talking about, more important than just jumping on the trend and pushing out a mass amount of content. 100%.
Yeah. And here's the other thing too. If you have a concept, you have to stick with it, right? Like we've actually seen this with television shows, right? We have seen so many television shows where we find it like after its second season or something, but it took us so long to get there to find it that the network cancels it. Right. And then we're like, why did they cancel this? This was such a good show. Well, it's because it didn't get the initial views on it. Right. And so it didn't get the chance. And, the thing with that makes social media so much better is that you don't have to cancel your show, right? Just because it's not getting the views, that means it just hasn't had the opportunity to be seen if it's good, right? If you truly believe it's good, which you have to believe it as like step one, right? If you truly believe you're onto something, you can evolve what you're doing, right? But you need to stick with it. And I tell people this all the time because they are so used to this, this rapid growth because of the last few years. That is not normal social media growth, right? And so now that we're kind of easing back into what is more normal social media growth, yes, there are the outliers that will grow suddenly overnight or something like that because of a viral video. It doesn't matter. Do not look at those people because that's not the norm, right? Like you need to grow your steady following.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that, when you think of it from that place, then you need to stick with what you're doing and you need to build that following around what you're doing. Because that's, again, going back to that stamina and having that motivation. If you're not happy with what you're creating, it's not going to work out anyway.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, you're hitting on all the things that I always tell people. So thank you for backing me up.
Got you. I got you.
I appreciate that. Amazing. So when it comes to your personal content, how do you sort of plan how you create? You're clearly a very busy person and you've only gotten busier over time with having multiple children, launching your business. How do you plan it all out for yourself? I think people are always wondering, like, how do other people do it? So could you give us a little glimpse as to how you record and schedule and plan?
Well, the secret now is that I don't do it personally. I have somebody that does that for me. In the beginning, though, I just thought of it the way when I quit my day job, I was like, I have to treat this like I'm still in a day job where I have my deadlines. I have to, make sure that everything is going up the way I would if I was working for a media company, right? So I really took that approach from the start. I woke up in the morning, got showered, got dressed as if I was going to go into the office, which I know people don't really do these days anymore, but I treated it like that, right? Even though I was going to then get up from my sofa and walk on over to my desk, it's the way I treated it from day one. And I scheduled everything out as far as the planning went and everything. I scheduled all of it out the way I would have if I was working for somebody. Nowadays, what we do, because I do have less time, right? And I need things to be a lot more efficient. I fly into Los Angeles and for a day or two, we block out 2 days of shooting, 1 day, 2 days of shooting. And we will knock out anywhere from a month to 2 months worth of content for YouTube in those 2 days.
Wow.
Whether it's a day or two. It just kind of depends on what the next few months entail, right? Like I know I'm not going to be in Los Angeles until the fall at this point, right? And so we had to knock out enough content in the last month or two that's going to cover the summer. right? So we've already completely shot a lot of that content. Will there be videos that I record along the way? Absolutely. I will record some videos. They'll feel a little less produced, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, we've got the schedule already planned out for months, right? And people don't think about that. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the TikTok and Instagram content goes, some of it is on the fly and some of it is also planned out. You can imagine with a business, especially as a beauty product based business, right? We've got our product launches and everything scheduled out for sometimes for up to 2 years, right? And so alongside with those product launches and promotions and just things that we need to hit goal wise, revenue goal wise, we also have marketing scheduled in as well. So there's a lot of that is a little bit, it's pretty scheduled in. Do things change along the way? Absolutely. Are things caught off guard? Absolutely. Yeah. But we try to schedule out as far as possible. And I have a team that now helps me do that.
And at what point, I think so many people wonder, like, what is the tipping point to like getting management, to hiring somebody to start helping you? I'm sure there were people along the way before you got to where you are today. Mm-hmm. Now you have a much more well-rounded team. You're flying out, right? That's a very big production. But again, before, I'm sure there were people along the way who stepped in and helped you and you grew to this point. What was the tipping point for you going from solo, Susan doing everything, to, Susan plus one or two? Where did you decide like, okay, I need the help. It's time.
Well, one, you have to have the money, right? So if you feel like your business is actually bringing in revenue that can be allotted for other people, not just for your own living expenses, right? Then that is the time. I started that pretty early on because I had always planned to have a fairly large production and not just be a solo, content creator. That said, I see too many people who have just started or are just getting started on social media and they're ready to hire people out. And what's different from them and then from me is that I had a background in media. I already knew what kind of team I needed to start. I already knew how things were going to go. I already knew the shows we were going to start. I already, you know what I mean? I already had that experience. I had already worked with people and managed teams around online video production, right? So I already knew who I needed to start with team-wise when I finally did start hiring people. Whereas I see so many people who are like, I'm just getting started on social media and I need to hire an assistant. I want to hire a videographer, an editor, all these things. And they haven't actually gotten into the weeds themselves, right? And I think what's so important about social media, opposed to even just like any television production or anything like that, is that social media revolves around you as a personality, right? And if you don't get your hands dirty, if you don't roll up your own sleeves and get into the weeds of your own content, you will never, ever understand it. You will never, ever know it. You will never inspire people to work with you. The people that work on my teams, some of them have been working with me for over a decade, right? Like they have stayed with me because they've been inspired. Huge. They feel like they're motivated. They feel like they have direction, right? The whole thing really comes down to my team doesn't feel like they're aimless, because if I was aimless and I didn't know how to do things, then they would feel the same way. They would just feel like I was a hot mess. And don't get me wrong, I'm a hot mess a lot of the time, but for the most part, everybody on the team, whether it's on the video side of things and content creation side of things or on the brand side of things, they all know what they're doing and the direction that we're going, right? Doesn't mean that we don't test things out and it fails and all that. That happens too. We like to test, right? But for the most part, everything is, we've got a vision, and that vision is it. When you have that vision, it's much easier to stay the path, and everybody feels good about that.
So with that direction, what sort of, I agree. You do have a very clear direction. And in order to lead a team, you do have to be so clear. And I think not enough content creators are clear on like who they truly are online. And I think that's part of the culture of what it's like today. That really is what differentiates someone who, like yourself, has been creating content and developing their personal brand, as I would say, over many, many years. You have a very clear idea of how you want to show up online, and that helps build a really great team. But today, we're seeing so many people with the invent of TikTok Shop, with the launch of TikTok in general, short form video, this trend, that trend. what do you think is like the road forward for people who are creating today? Is it to really try and reflect on what was successful in the past and bring it into the future? Or do you think that we're paving the way, completely new right now?
No, I think what's old is new always. It's always a cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just called TikTok the new YouTube, right? I've been around long enough to have seen YouTube go through the same transformation, right? And I've also seen Facebook do it. So I've seen every single platform go through the same exact thing. And that's really just their path to monetization, right? And I think that so many creators forget that they're creating brands and their content on other people's platforms, right?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I think you need to take that into account, right? If you really, really are building yourself as a social media content creator, you're always on someone else's platform. You are on borrowed, I guess, space, right? So, and whatever they do, like I see so many content creators complaining about the algorithm, reviews are down or whatever. Sorry. Not our problem.
I'm the exact same way. I know, same way. And I always feel like, I'm sorry that this is harsh, but like you were given this app for free at the end of the day, and they are able to change, monetize, and do whatever they want with the app that they created that you chose to be a part of. And the only thing you have control over is what you create. So your own website, your own email list, subscribers to things offside, product, all of those, your control, 100% ownership. But until then, you are playing a game on somebody else's field and you got to roll with it.
Yeah. So all that said, you should be looking at, yes, what has worked for you. Sure, you can look at what has worked for other people in your field and also in other, other niches, right? Like I like to take a lot of inspiration from lifestyle creators and from, my favorite content to watch is probably around food. So what are things that are working for people that are in food, right? And then seeing how that can be taken into the skincare world, the beauty world, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to have your analytics and that shows you what you should be focused on. At some point, I realized that was, skincare and cosmetic treatments, for instance, right? And so once I started to really focus in on what people were the most interested in hearing me specifically talk about, that's when my channel started to grow the most.
And you have been someone who's been very honest about treatments that they've done, cosmetic procedures that they've done. I'm sure that does not go without negativity. How would you give advice to other creators who have dealt with trolls, haters, personal family members coming up against them? How do you sort of move past that for yourself?
I think that, we like there's those trends online, right? Like you have to be Delulu, that kind of thing. I actually really believe that. And I think that I don't actually see it as being Delulu, being delusional. I tell people, I don't know what imposter syndrome is. Like when I hear people say that they're experiencing imposter syndrome, I'm kind of like, what do you mean? Like, have you not worked hard for this? Like, have you not always known that you wanted to do this? Right? Like, I don't necessarily, if I was, look back at my like 5-year-old self, of course I didn't know I was going to be a content creator on social media. The internet didn't really exist. Right. But I knew I wanted to do something like this. Right. I have always known this. I tell people that, when I was little, we were unbelievably poor. There were times where we didn't even have hot water. Like we didn't have anything. And I experienced racism and all of these things, but it didn't matter. I always knew my voice was important. I don't know why. I think it was my parents or something, but there was always something in me that felt like I needed to be here. And what I had to say was going to be important, whether people made me feel that way or not. And so because of that, I think that whenever I experience any negativity, it kind of doesn't matter because I've always felt this way. You know what I mean? And I think that this is a trait that a lot of people who make it in any kind of industry, I think that they've always felt that way. Right. So whenever I hear people talk about imposter syndrome, I'm kind of like, is this just something that people say? because it makes them feel relatable or something like that, because I don't think that's real. I think that when you really truly feel like you're supposed to be in the room and the focus in the room, then you can take negativity pretty easily because you kind of don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely comes from a strong sense of self for sure. Because I feel similarly in terms of, I do think that I understand that people do truly feel imposter syndrome. And I think part of that is because they haven't worked on self-development as much as maybe other people. And I know I've worked a lot on self-development, therapy, self-help books, doing the work, coaches, whatever else. And that does create a sense of, I deserve to be here. Yep. I have done the work. I know who I am. And I know that my intentions in creating whatever I do create, whether that be content or business wise or product wise, are beneficial to society. I'm trying to do something good here. So when people try and tear that down, it doesn't bother me because I know deep down that what I'm creating is positive in nature.
Yeah. Now, negativity can sometimes, everybody can get a little down from negativity, right?
Sure.
I think usually the way that I handle it, again, going back to being online for years, right? I feel like I've been online forever. There was a time, this is like the benefit of being one of the OGs of the internet, is there was a time where the anonymity of people online wasn't as big, right? There's always been a little sense of anonymity, right? You could create burner accounts and do all that stuff, but it wasn't as rampant, right? So back in like the Facebook days, for instance, right? When we would put content up and somebody would say something negative, I had the ability to click on that person's Facebook profile. And back then it could be open. I could know a lot about these people, right? Just from a few glances, right, at their page. And you would immediately get the sense, the majority of people who I guess are negative or trolls, right? You would immediately realize that this person is just kind of deflecting from what they're experiencing, right? And I think when you remember that, you have to remember that these are truly people who are in a negative space themselves, and it is not you, it is them. And whenever you remember to remember that, right? Like unless they're saying something that's like really, really true about you, that you've been just a terrible person, well, then that's your own fault, right? That you've been a terrible person. But when people are saying negative things about you, even your appearance, I can guarantee you they are worse off. It's just, that's just all there is to it. And so when you put yourself in that mental space, it really does help you kind of get by. And I think that, again, I have the ability to look back on the years when I could truly, truly learn so much about my trolls, that kind of thing.
So true.
And so true. Yeah, just remember that. A normal person isn't going to take the time to just sit there and be negative. And by the way, if they are a normal person and they just like were having a moment, most of those people will come back and apologize. I've had many people apologize to me in DMs, for saying something negative. And they're like, I don't know what came over me. Sometimes I'll respond because I'll be like, hey, what's up? Why? What was that all about?
What's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on?
And I've had several people who come back and they're like, I don't know what came over me. And I'm so sorry. Sometimes I forget that people online are real people.
You're like, hi, Susan here. It's me on the other end. Just curious why you're so upset about this. Checking in on you.
Yeah. You okay? You need a hug.
Way to go. I know. Way to go the extra mile. I love it. Incredible. And what is some advice that you would give an early creator right now before we switch to Susan, the brand founder, and how she looks at content creation and influencers through that lens? What is some advice that you would give to early stage content creators now, or even people who've been at it for a few years and just aren't seeing that big growth? How do you encourage those people that look up to you?
I think that too many content creators really focus on the number of people following them. And I think that's the wrong way to look at things. Nowadays, I always go back to community. Right? If you have a community of 100 really dedicated people, that's a very big following. It really is. These are 100 people who listen to what you have to say. So nurture those people don't think about the people that aren't following you. Think about the people that are following you. That is most important. And honestly, to a brand, that is also very important. Maybe it doesn't pay as much money because you don't have as big of a reach, but I would rather work with somebody who has this really small dedicated following than work with somebody who has a massive following that never buys anything that they ever talk about, or never really, takes their advice or anything like that. That brings zero value to a brand. Instead, focus on your dedicated community and building that dedicated community and really nurturing them. I will always, always fall back on that. Your community and nurturing your community is so much more important than growth.
Yeah. 100% agree. And I think it is just a constant reminder that people need. I always tell people, instead of continuing to figure out how are you going to get more people to show up here, what type of value are you adding to the people who already decided to show up here? Are you commenting on their content? Are you showing up in their DMs? Are you giving them, little surprises and treats and thank yous for already saying, yes, I choose to follow you and listen to you? Because those people can still hit unfollow. They can still decide
and they do sometimes. But that's okay. You can't always expect them to stick around. But the other thing is that I think people forget that when you're a social media content creator, you are not an actor in Hollywood. You're not a celebrity per se, even when you have tons of followers. I think that some people these days see it as this career where they're going to become a celebrity. You've got a celebrity-ish vibe about you. But the truth is, people feel like they know you. Right? And if they know you, you become their friend, you become their family, you become part of their world, right? And so if you're not nurturing them, if you're not engaging with them in your DMs, which by the way is one of the most important parts of your part as a content creator, is making sure you are engaging with people, right? Via DM, in the comments, whatever. If you're not doing that, then you're never going to grow.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter if you've got a following.
Yeah. It can't just be the you show. You're there for them.
This is a relationship with lots of people. Yeah. So if you can't manage a small following, you're never going to manage a large following.
Well, I think that's the perfect segue into kind of looking at things through a new lens. So you launched Naturium to incredible success. Congratulations as a brand marketer. It's been wonderful to watch the brand grow and the content and just the rave over the products and the quality of them versus the price. So major congratulations on that. Now that you are a brand founder, how are you looking at the lens of influencer marketing differently? How did, creating your influencer marketing strategy for Naturium, what did that look like for you?
I think for us, we kind of took that same approach. We still take that same approach where community matters the most. And it doesn't matter if our community, especially the content creators that are involved in it, if they have a very small following or if they have a very large following, we treat everyone the same. And for the most part, I think we're constantly trying to encourage our micro influencer community as well, whether that's through PR gifting or inviting them to events, maybe even working with them in influencer marketing as far as paid content goes. So we're always constantly looking at every person in our community, not just the very big ones. And in fact, sometimes the big ones, as much as we like working, obviously, and we appreciate the really big content creators and influencers, sometimes, especially when you're a brand starting out, you don't have the budget to work with those people, right? And so you have to be really choosy if you are going to work with someone like that, of that caliber. And when I say that caliber, I don't necessarily mean that they're better than someone who's a micro. It's just that when they have a bigger reach, then obviously they can command a little bit more money. And so you're really kind of looking at it as a whole. And I think that a lot of brands make the mistake of just trying to work with really big content creators from the get-go. And you really shouldn't discount what value the micro influencers bring.
And with micro influencers, as someone who does influencer marketing, I also agree micro influencers are so important to, the life cycle of all of our marketing. But it takes a lot more management, a lot more time. And there's, I'm sure, so many incomings to Naturium. What does sort of your team look like? And are you guys also using, platforms and other ways to discover creators? I'm sure you guys work and gift with so many. So I'm just curious, how do you manage? How do you find your people?
We have a whole team at this point, but it started with me before I had a team, right? It started with me looking at people. I think the easiest way for a content creator, especially when you're starting out, to get the attention of a brand you love is to talk about that brand, tag that brand. I see too many content creators who are like, I'm not going to tag brands unless they're working with me or they're like paying me. Well, that's a fail.
Yep.
That's not organic. That's not authentic. If you like something, talk about it. Make sure that brand knows you're talking about it, because that's when they're going to find you. That's where they're going to see the value in working with you. Don't be a snob. I mean, geez, the audacity.
It really is wild. There is a thread going on right now that's absolutely going viral of a woman. And I forget if she's a content creator or content creator / coach, but she says, I don't care what anybody tells you. If you are tagging brands organically for free, you're giving it away. This is the worst strategy ever. And when I tell you, the replies are off the wall. Like, I also had to hold back. And I was like, well, I'm sorry that you don't care what anybody says, but after 10 years, I don't really even let a brand pay anybody who hasn't organically tagged. And I'm not saying oh, you need to have a full feature. I need to see a 10-minute YouTube video. No, we're talking a thank you on stories. We're saying a DM or an email reply. It doesn't have to be an all out love fest.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, the love fest is really important to us, because we absolutely don't want to work with somebody who doesn't know our brand and love it already, because that is not authentic. You're never going to get the best content when you're working with somebody who doesn't even know who your brand is. I've had so many brands reach out to me over the years and say that they want to work with me. And I'm like, but I haven't tried your product, right? So I have to try your product. I have to know I love your product. And even at that, I'll even test it amongst my community, right? I'll kind of see, well, I'm liking this product. Let me tell you about it. And I see the response from my community. If they're loving it, then they're not going to mind that I'm doing an ad with this brand, because they're going to know this is authentic, right? They're not going to be upset about this, because that's the worst thing you can do, is upset your community. I always go back to your community. If you're upsetting them, if you're not nurturing them, then nothing's going to work out. So if you want to work with brands, make it organic and authentic first. Love these brands. Don't just, go out there and expect these brands to just find you. It just does not work that way.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important for brands, even small ones, to have worked into their budget gifting. And I think a brand like yours is very generous when it comes to gifting. And, we see it often that people are opening up the Naturium box just to give people an idea about how many gifts do you send out a month, would you say, or do you budget for?
I mean, again, we're a much larger brand now, so I don't think that this is a good measure for somebody who's just starting out with a brand, right? We probably in the beginning were only giving out 20 boxes a month, or maybe at that, right? I don't even know if we were doing that much. But I'd say now we can probably send about, we send out thousands of PR gifting boxes a month, and not necessarily boxes. Sometimes it's a small envelope. It just kind of depends on what the product is. But usually when somebody who has been talking about our brand, who has been a true lover of our brand, right? If they're reaching out and they're saying that they'd like to try something, then, it's not necessarily a person that's going to become part of our regular PR list, which, by the way, we don't really have anymore, because we try to segment everything out into who these products work for, right? But that doesn't mean that I won't have the team send out something. I'll send out products to people all the time, because they've just been such good. I mean, I actually look at our customers all the time, right? If somebody tags me or they send me a DM and they're like, I have purchased so many times from you. I love your brand. And I had a problem, or, I was so sad that I didn't get this product before it sold out. I'll remember that person. I will send that person to our team, and I will check on it and say, has this person actually purchased from us? We can obviously have the information. We can look this up, right? If that person's truly a fan of the brand, we want to nourish that person. We want to make sure that that person remains a strong part of our community, because that person is so much more valuable to us than somebody who's never heard of us.
Yep. And on that note, like in terms of someone who's never heard of you or people who pitch blindly, no proof, what are some of the no-nos from a brand founder that you would like to spread in terms of like, please don't reach out this way because we'd really prefer this?
I mean, I think that if you have questions for the brand, whether it's customer service or just about the brand in general, PR, you should send every brand at this point, or it's not a good brand, right, has their own social media. Send a DM to the brand, because chances are there's somebody on the brand side. I know for sure at Naturium, we have people who have been part of our community for years. These are actually people who started as a mixed makeup community who have now become part of the Naturium customer service community, who just love skincare so much. They love the brand so much that they've now become part of that community where they're helping out our customers, answer questions about the products, and do all of that. So you can just send a DM to the brand and somebody is going to help you.
Amazing. So you would prefer people send the DM instead of cold pitch or comment on a post being like, hey, what's the,
No,
that
I mean, let's keep it professional and keep the conversations in private, because that's always the better way to do it. But there are always people on the other end who are there to help you. And, sending a DM to me might get my attention, but remember, I'm also being tagged for so many other reasons, right? Whether it's just for my own content, people wanting me to react to something, the chances of getting a response from me are lower than if you just message our company, where we have people who are there to do this as part of their job.
Yeah, I think people forget, both on the brand side, even they'll say, well, I DM'd them twice. I'm like, okay, they probably get thousands of DMs. You got to just like hang in there, keep tagging them, you'll get there. And definitely.
I mean, and not just that, I mean, there are human beings, right? Behind the exactly. That side of things, right? Like I'll sometimes see a message from somebody who's like, I have sent 3 DMs, 2 emails to your team. And I go back to the team. I'm like, what's going on? Why did we miss this person? And they'll be like, well, that person sent it on a Friday night at midnight and sent those back to back. Like, so we never even got to it because, now we try to have somebody working on the weekend. But I mean, for a society where we complain that we overwork people, then they expect it though from the brand.
Absolutely.
Right?
Everything should be instant. So yes, keep that in mind, creators and purchasers. Not everyone can get back to you within, I think it was really all Bezos's fault. We've now fallen into a trap of thinking everything should come within 24 hours. So
100%. Yeah.
So funny. And when it comes to, converting those people from who've been gifted, Naturium, so lovely, into paid, what are you looking at in terms of their content? Is it a particular style? Is it a particular engagement rate? What kind of is the green flag to you be like, this might be interested to, float this up to paid sponsorship or usage?
True love of the brand. This is 100%. This isn't necessarily every single brand, but I know for our brand, when we're working with people, they have to really love the brand, right? They have to, and there are people who know how to work this, right? Like there are UGC creators out there who go out and they find products that they like, and then they will create essentially an ad for a brand without it being an actual ad, a confirmed ad.
Yeah.
And then it'll get the attention of the brand, and that brand will reach out and say they want to use it. This has become a real thing these days, right? Yeah. Does that mean that that's all we're looking for? No. For the most part, I'd say that the ads that we whitelist come from true customers who 100% have never had a following before. They just posted something because they loved it. That's when we feel the true authenticity of someone's love. And we tend to promote those videos the most.
Yep, that makes complete sense. And then just lastly, for events, I think so many creators now that we are kind of like putting our COVID era behind us and really wanting to be in person again and make those connections, they want to be invited to events. What is your best suggestion for getting on the radar and getting an invite?
I mean, first and foremost, tagging the brand, talking about the brand, right?
Yes, of course.
Because again, there are so many content creators these days. We're not going to find you if you're not trying to find us, right? So that's first and foremost. Second, something as simple as putting in your bio what city you are in is a game changer. Mm-hmm. Holy moly. Mm-hmm. The guessing game that we go through trying to figure out if we should be inviting somebody because we don't know where that person is. Let us know by simply putting it in your bio. Maybe, your bio might seem like it's not there for, it's not really getting viewed, but maybe not by the average consumer viewer, but it's getting viewed by the brands, right? Like we try to garner as much information about you before we reach out to you. Always. Mm-hmm. So anything that you have out there that we can see pretty easily, that is always helpful. Because if we don't know what city you're in, we're not going to invite you to our New York City event if we don't know you're in New York City. Like that's just a given. It's too hard for us to try to do these mental gymnastics. So just make it easy for the brand.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the best advice. It seems so simple, but it's so true. So many people are like, I don't know why I'm not getting invited to events. I'm like, well, people don't know where you are. I'm like, you can always send a DM, be like, by the way, I'm in this area. If you ever do an event, blah, blah, blah. There's normally a running internal list by city so that when it does come to event time, we can easily reach out. So keep that in mind, but also update those bios, people.
Absolutely.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for your time today. I would love for you to just leave off with just any sort of last advice you have, especially for people who are truly focused on beauty content creation as you have been on your journey. What are the words of wisdom you might have for them? Because I think we all know that content creation is a journey, but beauty content creation is a very special one that is really unique in its own industry. So what would you say to people who are really just looking up to you and want to, follow in your footsteps?
I would say to stay the course and focus on yourself, focus on your own content. I see things like drama within these beauty communities. Mm-hmm. I see people who are jealous of each other and even just people who are quietly jealous of other content creators, especially beauty content creators. And I'll tell you what, in my 10 years specifically as a content creator, someone else's success has never gotten in the way of my own success. My success can be parallel to their success. It can be all at the same time. There is so much space for everybody. And in fact, lifting each other up is by far the best way to grow. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. So when you focus on other people instead of on yourself, you are failing. You are not going to make it as a content creator. You have to focus on yourself and you have to be happy for other people because their success is not going to undermine your success.
Yep. Oh, I love that message. Thank you so much. I agree that no matter how many beauty content creators there are, they're all doing it differently at different ages, in different stages of life, with different styles. And there's enough room for everyone because there's also so many brands, and they all need content. So thank you so much for your time and wisdom today. I truly appreciate it. And I know that the community is actually going to love this episode. So thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, Sonia. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.